Before I get into the episode, I have a resource I'd like to share with you. This episode is a part of my boundary setting series, and I have created a boundary setting workbook that contains all of the questions and information in this boundary setting series. And you can either print out the workbook to write in the answers to the questions, or you can fill it in on your computer, tablet, or phone. The best way to use this workbook is to follow along with these episodes and fill it out as you go along, but you can also go through it on your own if you prefer to do it that way. This is a complimentary resource that I'm offering, and you can download it by visiting my website at laurenlasallecoaching.com and going to the resources page. I hope you find it helpful. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Podcast. I'm Lauren LaSalle, and I'm a licensed therapist, highly sensitive person, and HSP coach. This bi-weekly podcast is meant for highly sensitive people and their loved ones, as both experiences will be discussed. Thank you for joining me, and let's begin. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Podcast. I'm Lauren, and this is the third episode in my boundary setting series. The first two episodes are episode 7, 4 Common Barriers to Setting Boundaries for HSPs, and episode 9, How to Identify Your Needs as an HSP. If you haven't listened to those episodes yet, it may be helpful to do so before listening to this one, since it is helpful to first identify any barriers there may be to setting boundaries, and then begin to identify your needs before communicating what your needs are. This episode will cover communicating your needs and starting to set boundaries and how to deal with feelings of guilt that often accompany this. When it comes to communicating your needs to others, I thought it might be helpful to give some examples of situations where boundaries may need to be set, as well as examples of what you might say. If you're asked to take on more at work but don't feel like you're able to, you could say something like, "This is not something I can take on right now," or "I want to do my best work and I won't be able to do that if I take on too much." If anything is asked of you by anybody, you could say, "I need to check my schedule and I will get back to you." And this not only allows you to actually check your schedule if you need to, but it also gives you time to think about whether or not you actually want to agree or you can agree to what is being asked of you. If you feel like you're not able to make the correct decision in the moment and would like more time to think about it, you could say something like, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now and would like to take a break and discuss this later," or "I need some time to think about this before I give you an answer." Of course, people aren't always receptive to boundaries being set, especially if you haven't set boundaries with them in the past. And in this case, you can acknowledge and validate their feelings, like maybe they're feeling disappointed or upset, while still holding your boundary. For example, you could say something like, "I can tell that you're feeling disappointed about my answer. I'm putting my needs first, and this is what I have decided." There are a few questions that you can ask yourself when something is asked of you. If I say yes, can I actually follow through with what is asked of me? And will I have enough energy, time, etc.? Do I want to say yes, or do I just think I should say yes? And why do I feel the need to say yes? You can make a list of pros and cons to saying yes. Sometimes it can be helpful to get your thoughts down on paper so you can actually see them. Ask yourself, how do I physically feel when I think about saying yes to this request? So checking in with your body, noticing any physical sensations that you may be experiencing, maybe kind of an upset stomach or tight chest might indicate you're leaning towards saying no. What are my values? Does saying yes support my values? Does saying no support my values? I know this is a lot of questions, and at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that you can have access to all of these questions, plus everything else I cover in the boundary setting series, including what I'll cover in the last episode, which will be released on October 8th. Now that I've talked a little bit about how to communicate your needs, or at least give you some ideas about how you can do this, set the boundary and take time to reflect on what answer works best for you when something is asked of you, we will move on to coping with feelings of guilt. So, here are some ways to cope with feelings of guilt, as well as some things to keep in mind. It can be helpful to be aware of what your needs are and to prioritize those. So, this might mean writing down what your needs are when you are identifying those, so you can have something to refer to if you feel like you need to remind yourself about the reason why you are setting a boundary with someone. Ask yourself if you are sacrificing your own needs to accommodate someone else's, which is likely something you are used to doing if setting boundaries is new to you. Practice self-compassion. If you like to do guided meditations, you can look up self-compassion meditation on YouTube or in a meditation app. Remember that feeling guilty is linked to your compassion and empathy toward others and shows that you care about them, and this is not a bad thing. Remember that it's okay if people are disappointed when you set a boundary. They often just need time to process it. Remember that it's not your fault if other people feel disappointed, and you are not responsible for how other people feel. And give yourself credit for what you have accomplished. Setting boundaries is not easy. So I feel like I threw a lot of information at you in this episode, and I hope you find it helpful. And if you feel like you need extra support when it comes to setting boundaries, feel like you need some clarification, or if you would like some personalized feedback and tips, you can email me at lauren@laurenlasallecoaching.com to set up a complimentary connection meeting or to get more information about my coaching program. As always, if you have any ideas for episode topics, if you have any questions for me to answer on the podcast, or if you would like to write an email sharing your story for me to read on the podcast, you can email me at lauren@laurenlasallecoaching.com. You can find out more about my coaching program, as well as resources and links to my social media, by visiting my website at laurenlasallecoaching.com. There's also a link on my website to join my email list, and by doing so, you will receive a free resource from me called 5 Self-Care Tips for Highly Sensitive People. Before I sign off, I will leave you with a quote. I set boundaries not to offend you, but to respect myself. Unknown.